Okay, we are back for good this time. I had a little technical hiccup, but it's good to get those out of the way. This is part two of the 2004 Altoona Tower trip. Me editing the old photos from there. Usually, I'll give the preamble again for people who are watching this delayed, because no one's watching right now. Uh, uh, Basically, I'm just going back through the archives, finding the photos that I edited for an internet of the long past, where file sizes were around 100 kilobytes and my camera size was only 3 megapixels. But either way, I am re-editing these. I think I've already done an Altoona Tower blog post. This is basically just me upgrading the photos. A lot of the tower internals I'm not going to resize and leave at the original resolution. Not great, but it's no sense crying over 600, a couple hundred K in savings. But we've at the time, again, I was only working with about with the SD card sizes and the limited time. So once again, I'm going to go over. I actually accidentally had forgotten one additional photo to do from inside the tower. This is just an amazing photo. You can't get this anymore. I'm standing in one of the bump outs with the ALTO sign, looking at the other bump out as a train passes through. So this is just really cool thing to be able to have done there back in the day. Just gonna give this a quick save out. I'm also renaming everything simply because I did not have the didn't quite have my naming conventions down back then. I think that this is something that I actually had renamed, but let's see. Yeah, this is the old version. Anywho, now we're getting into some of the photos of the classic signal bridge. Now I got much better photos of this back in the day. Sorry, back in 2012 where I came back. That was a completely external trip. My 2004 trip, I was with an Amtrak friend, and he pulled some strings to get an interior visit. But I didn't know when I'd be back or whatever. Turns out I wasn't back for quite some time. Ugh. It's a terrible name, but I'm going to, as I call it, the famous Altoona gantry. This is actually a Penn Central vintage signal bridge. But it got to the point where they realized you didn't need the intricate lattice work of steel, and you just go with I-beams. It's a shame that these haven't been with the way that they do cutovers these days. I mean, there's nothing wrong with this style here, although it's not quite as maintenance-free as an aluminum one. But railroads these days will take down anything just because of the cost of testing stuff in parallel. So I'm just going to go through here. I think I go in here. Yeah. So this is actually in the Railroaders Memorial Museum, which is across from the Altoona Amtrak station. They salvaged the model board from Esso Tower, which unfortunately burned down about 5 or 6 years after this. I was going to Pittsburgh to visit a friend, and I passed by Esso Tower just maybe a day or two after it had burned down and had been reduced to a pile of rubble. But the model board had been pulled out and saved, although without context. I mean, it's not as... why am I even resizing this? That's just dumb. Or even sharpening it. I think this is just fine the way it is. Yeah. Did the color adjust? Oh yeah. All right, give it a save. SO, of course, that was an odd. I've seen pictures of it on John Roma's site. It's an odd machine. I'm not entirely sure what it is, but I mean, it went from being a 4-track whatever to this sort of 3-track thing. But you can see that the Conrail really didn't want to pull too much, so they actually, at the time, it was cheaper for them to leave that sort of 4th stub in. Eventually, in the late 90s, it was completely re-signaled, although the tower was left in place. Got modern signal bridge type things, and but it retained the pneumatic points. Not sure what's going to happen to it in the other stuff. Oh, that's the other thing. It's not a you see. It says the something signal company. Let's just try to take a look at this one if we can find this out. What does it say? Yeah, it's a union switching signal, but your the high signals have both an A and a B indication, and it wasn't a Model 14. It was some weird thing. So I'm not sure exactly what it was. I'll have to go and see. See, here's a nice sharp version of it. This is one you just need to rename. I mean, I can always go back to that same museum, but get modern pictures. Another neat thing of this, I'll tell you, this is 4913. And you wouldn't be a PRR museum without a GG1, of which there are about 13, about more than 13, and probably less than 20 preserved. Not a bad number given they only made 100 of them. But I'll show you in a second of what was neat. I believe that they've built a shed around this today, and it is protected from the elements. Back in 2004, it was still showing off a bit of a cursory cosmetic restoration here into a PRR Tuscan Red scheme. I don't know if it was originally that. The PR, apparently, from what I've read, this is just from memory. The PR only painted 5 GG1s in this Tuscan Red pinstripe pinstripe scheme. Everybody, a lot of the everybody's going to have the model of that. Oh, it's passenger red, it's passenger red, it's passenger red. But I mean, they only made a couple of them. And it didn't really stay around. It was barely more popular than that platinum mist that they tried out on like either 1 or 3 of them. But note that staircase, because not only was this not inside, you could just go inside. I mean, it was just. This museum was not that old at this time. I forget. I can't give you the exact time it was founded or started or whatever. But at this time, it is just sort of getting off the ground, and it was kind of still a little rough around the edges as they just sort of put things out and let you sort of walk around through them. So I'll show you. I'll show you what that results in. You can go inside. This is from the engineers. Where is it? This might be conductors on the opposite side. I'm not entirely sure. No, this would have been an engineer's position. The visibility on these for the engineer was generally seen on GG1s was not great, especially in places like Penn Station. You would actually need the conductor to help the engineer, assist the engineer in calling out signals, because they just had no visibility for a great number of them. Not quite as bad as a steam locomotive, but there was a reason that up through the 80s, the Interstate Commerce Commission, later the FRA, required all signals to have right-hand placement. And if anything really did a lot to destroy the diversity of signaling, it was the repeal of that regulation. Because once you could just put 2 masts on either side of a double-track main line, I mean, before that, you would actually need signal bridges or brackets to do CTC, to have bidirectional 2-track CTC to get the right-hand signal placement. As soon as the ICC lifted it in the early 80s, you could just put a mast on either side with left-hand or right, whatever, left-hand placement. So, but there was a reason, because when long hood forward, you can't, left-hand placement does not work. Anyway, here we are showing the master indicator here for the GG1. To the right here, you have the cab signals. There's your restricting, approach, medium, clear. 3 amp meters for, I'm assuming you either had 3 transformers. Note your speedometer only goes to 100 miles an hour. GG1s were geared for that. Some of them were re-geared for 110, which was mildly successful, but which was marginally successful, I'll say. But a lot of the G's reputation comes from its acceleration, not necessarily its top speed. And by being geared low, you would just, they would apply that 800 horsepower and they would just take off. And a lot of them were just geared for 90. The freight ones were just geared for 90. And at the time, that was, rip-roaring fast for the NEC. But later on, it was, a lot of the people are saying, like, oh my God, they went 120, and yeah, just peg it, and all these stories. And I'm sure that at some place you could get a G up over 100. But Gs were not the things that were going to be really setting the speed records, because, electrics, they're geared for a speed. And it's not, it's kind of tough to get them above that. Steam is where you really could do the stuff, because so much of that is based on what the engineers could get. I mean, a lot of steam engines didn't even come with speedometers, but anyway. I'm just going to leave this one full size. That's another interesting one to just keep the way it is. Here we have the engineer's control area. Not sure. Oh, there's your cab signal cutoff. Note, made by US&S. So when US&S made your signals, I mean, when you had a cab signal display, you got the same sort of beefy cast iron cabinet that you got for this, the actual signals. They didn't know how to make it any other way. Air brakes, I'm not an air brake person. There are air brake people who can tell you exactly what type of brake schedule and crap those are. I'm not one of those. But I can tell you that this guy, the controller was 22 notches. And the way the GG1 worked, for those of you who don't know, it's a straight AC locomotive. That means you can't, in DC locomotives, you can control the voltage. He used universal motors. They weren't synchronous. So voltage, speed was a function of voltage. In a DC locomotive, your voltage is a function of resistance. You cut in resistance through cam controllers. You have your parallel, your series, and between those you have smoothing resistors to let you notch up through a bunch of intermediate steps, turning the extra energy into heat. An AC locomotive got its voltages through, at least the straight AC used tap changers on a transformer. What a tap changer is, it changes out the it's a mechanical thing that changes out the windings. So you basically, in a G, your transformer had 22 distinct speeds that the engine could go. You'd notch to a voltage, and the voltage would be a speed. Now, it wasn't perfect. There'd be a little bit, you get a little as you accelerated up to it. But basically, when you had 22, that it was smooth. The acceleration was smooth enough. It wasn't like you had to go from 600 RPM to 3600. You had a very fine grade of what was going on there. Here's another. And I'm just going to leave that one the same. I'm not going to bother. There we go. I'm just going to rename that. And here's your other one. This actually shows your brake pipe indication and the master controller. I'll just leave that alone as well. Nothing. Photo's fine. Here we go. Wait, what? What? What did I just do? Oh, shit. Wait, what's going on here? This is weird. Oh, that's why. They're over there. There we go. Shit. Yep, and it's like this one. You just the same thing we saw before, just sort of the main critical parts. One other thing is apparently when the G's were actually put together in multiples, the controller could not go over the 18th notch because it would draw too many amps and blow the section breakers. Anyway, that's our first batch of photos there. Let me just delete the ones that need to be deleted. Not that. All right, here we go. Sort by name. So I'm not in my normal flow of things here. Let's see what's going on in the old chat. Oh, not so many people now. Looks like I lost everyone. My chat seems to have frozen there. Hope the chat's working for other people. Hello? Okay, whatever. Anyway, I'm just going to keep on going. So here we have the conductor side of things. What the hell am I doing? Much less stuff going on. Basically, all he's got is besides what I assume is probably asbestos all over the place. He's basically got his cab signal mimic, clear, approach medium, approach restricting, and the brake valve. So that's his job. Notice the sort of the bridge truss structure that appears every so often in these wonderful photos. I'm just going to save this one out too. It's just a taller version of the engineer's position. Just rename this one. Next. I don't know what this was. I think I was just taking pictures of stuff at this point. These are probably breakers. Not high voltage, of course. Wait, no, I'm just gonna rename that one as well. Not doing much there. All right. I don't know why these photos are weirdly out of order. I could have sworn that I was on this side. I don't even know. I thought I started at this side of the tower, walked across, entered the tower, then came back over to the museum. Maybe I started on a different card or something. I don't know. I don't know what the... I thought that these came before we actually went in the tower. But... You know, here we have the classic original 1900 whatever signal bridge with the tower and some random earth moving equipment. This is a Cove industrial track in front. This has its own signal about a quarter or so mile down the track by a sort of a public grade crossing out of the way. The PRR, would just put the signal where you actually had sight lines. Today, the signal's right around the curve because, whatever, who cares? If the crew brake passes the red, that's their fault, not the the whatevers. Blah blah blah. I wonder where. Here it is. What do I call this? Psha. Okay, that's a terrible name. I'm not using that. All right, yeah, I got to keep talking or we lose people. Again, the tower, this is the Conrail paint scheme, which is sort of a faded version. I mean, when this went up, this was gray and blue, which was Conrail-y, I guess. And the paint looked pretty good when it first went in. By the way, notice the tower window syndrome. Used to have nice windows. Now it's got shitty windows. But, oh, there's a nice one. There's a nice one on the relay room. And then NS, midway through the 2000s, around 2005 or 7, did a nice, all-over gray paint scheme. It wasn't nice, but, they put paint on it, which was nice. And I was like, oh, yeah, that means they're not closing, they're not going to close that for who knows how long. And then 5 years later, it was closed. But they did put a nice coat of paint. The roof's okay. That's freaking key for preserving these things. Once the roof goes in a wooden structure, it's just toast. They made it's still probably going to get torched, but I just love it. It has all these damn pop-outs. And that's what it looked like when they built it. I think the pop-outs were there. I don't know if those little underwood parts were, but this is pretty original. I do feel like this is weirdly out of order. Note the fall colors that are approaching. This sort of parallels my 2012 trip, which also was in fall, and I was out there to take photos of a fall foliage excursion run by Bennett Levin's E8s. Just a couple pictures of the which switch is that? It's not the Cove switch. It's the 13 switch there. Coming off the not necessarily industrial track, but a power storage track. Plus the Cove Industrial, of course. And note all the airlines. I mean, this is your typical stuff. This is that bridge you can get up on, the sort of the Altoona Rail Bridge. To this day, it has very low barriers, so photos are pretty trivial to take from it. And here we can see the two high signals on the gantry, the 10R and 12R, and also so 12 is broken up into the 12R. It says there's a B and a C. Hold on here. Come on, get down there. Yeah, so that's 18R off the Cove. And we have a 12RC off the power track. So I guess that there are probably multiple tracks there back in the day, all homed off of the 12R. 12R was the 101 track that went just between Alto and Slope. It was basically a glorified yard lead to get stuff out of the way. If you had power coming out over the number 5 switch or a train coming out over number 5, the 101 track would be useful for bringing in a parallel movement. Today, the 101 track is still kind of there, serving the same purpose. So here we have CP Cove, which replaced part of Alto, and that just comes straight out on the 101. There's the old power track, the derail, but that's not even interlocked anymore. And there we have it coming into what's now the CP Altoona. So CP Altoona, there's the old Slope, there's Alto, and Altoona is just they basically went between the two and put it right in there. It's a very unimaginative interlocking. Really unimaginative. Just not the ladder, it's just a straight back and forth ladder, but you know, them's the breaks. Just gotta figure out some of the stuff to do. All right, here we go. Moving on. Which was this? Let's zoom in. Zoom in. Enhance. Can't quite read it. I think I have a better photo somewhere. I think I know which one that is. That is gonna be 5, whatever that is. W. Sometimes they're named. I can never get when you have paired switches. There's no good convention over if you just want to call one. Conrail went to an A-B system, which is unhelpful because you don't know what direction it is. Unless you have a diagram, you can't divine it. Amtrak tends to use east-west, but I'm not entirely certain. A-B is pretty much the standard way you do that, but I have seen EW. I think that might have just been a PRR thing, though. I'm just going to crop the stone out. It's not super helpful. Get a 3x4 box. Quick sharpen. I got these same photos like so many years later. Because that day I visited again was also so rainy. But man, I was super jazzed after the visit inside the tower. Sort of what do you call it? Anachronistically naming these. I can't call it an old paint scheme on a 2004 photo because in 2004 I wouldn't have known that it was an old paint scheme. But I don't think anyone was going to really nitpick that I'm not naming my photos at when they were first made. Just another good shot. Again, I was limited. It's not hard to take nice photos from this vantage point. But back in the day when you're working with 3 megapixel, and that's why there was the guy I was with even would trot out with a film camera because he was sort of down. You could still be pretty down on digital back in 2004, given the resolutions available and what 35 millimeter film could still do. Now, even then, I mean. I was never a fan of film, but some people could still, they'd use it for the special occasion stuff. Okay. Alright, just making sure. Don't want to delete anything by accident. Later. Alright. I think we're on to the last batch here. 12 photos. Boom, perfect. Perfect size. Good chance to go check on what's up in the old chat there. What the? Come on. Let me answer the dude's questions. Come on. Hey, we still got some people here watching. Glad to have you on board. Feel free to ask any questions in the chat. If I don't answer them myself. And sorry for any pauses or something. I got some fun stories coming up actually at the as we close in on this, because this day went from bad to interesting. No, it didn't go from bad. It went from good to interesting. Good, fine for me, but stay tuned and you'll if you stay to the end, you'll get a fun story. Got to keep you here somehow. So yeah, again, I'm just doing I don't know. Let's see what I can find here. For Doom. I need to go back one. Wake up there. Come on. Anyway, that'll wake up in a second. But I just want to dig out my 2012 photos. Yeah, you can see. Well, see both sets. I went back twice. I got this set here on a sunny day, I think in April, which is spring, and here's a fall photo. That's same. You can see what they did. They just applied a coat of paint, made it look arguably nicer. But here's just me getting the same shots with the new signal bridges and stuff in place, which was unfortunate. But it took them long enough to do it that it gave me time to get out there. But just wanted to give you guys some context of what the tower looked like about 7 years later. Got some helper moves. All right, let's put that aside and let's finish this out. What the? Oh, I didn't resize this. There we go. Coming up the next one. There's those. So you can, the size of the helper pocket is not that large, or was not that large, because it only existed between that pedestal signal up by the station and the main signal. I mean, the pocket just kept going. You can look at the diagram. The pocket just sort of didn't go straight all the way. It didn't keep going up the hill, but it didn't like swerve in. It sort of kept going underneath the bridge. So this is the pocket track. It looks like it's a main track, but it's not. And your helper pocket ends right there. You know, it's not like it ends at a switch curve in, because it has another switch. It becomes part of a ladder. So that's just one of the things that can be deceptive of the old Altoona, of how small that helper pocket is. You could probably put 4 engines in there, or 2 helper sets. What helper is that? 3342. And what switch is that one? That's the 23 switch. What did I say that was? 3342. In the pocket. Boom. Boom, done. Gotcha. Alright, this is just me doing... And again, it's interesting of how hard and complex my photo management had become. Every time I got a new camera, it just went worse and worse. So back in the day before my Gen 1 digital camera went from 2002 to 2006, which I think is actually December 2015, and that one was limited to 290 whatchamacallit sets. The next one had 1 gigabyte cards, and I could fill each one of those up with about a couple hundred or 900 or something. The size, the numbers didn't matter. But my current camera setups, I got zoom, I've got 16 gigabyte cards, and it's just because with both the zoom and the free digital real estate, it's like I just go crazy. It's like with so much stuff vanishing, it's like you get every angle you damn can. But back in the day, it was just like I got 3 shots I can waste on the interlocking. I will try to cram as much as I can into it, and you get photos showing it, but you didn't get I never zoomed in on any of those damn switches, which I don't know if that matters, but it's one of these days. At least it'll make it harder to construct a virtual reality sim. Who knows how many days, maybe 10 years from now, 25 years from now, I can just feed all these goddamn things into one of those Oculus or VR things, and it'll just generate a 3D environment, and you can go dick around in it, which would be pretty damn cool. So I think that's the Cove Industrial Track switch in the near term. Yeah, that's the 21 switch right there. And the 23 switch, plus the airline, plus NS 3342, and that's all in the eastbound direction. Having descriptive photo tags is one of the, photo file names is one of the easiest. A lot of people rely on, I'm going to tag the hell out of this. It's just... Okay, you can do that. You can try to include some metadata with your photos, but it's going to be clunky. Not everything's going to whatever it. And if you just named your damn files descriptively, then you never have to worry about the tagging. Yeah, I got to make sure that I don't have these new old photos collide with the the new photos of Alto. Very, very handsome. That's probably one of the newer parts, is they replaced whatever ladder it had with something modern and steel. I'm not even going to bother. My old Olympus cameras that I had, my first Gen 1 and Gen 2 digital cameras, had much better color than my current Canon. Canon shoots everything blue, and I got to color correct everything. With these old ones, I don't have to color correct them one bit. And this color it's a gray day, and it's a great thing. Wait, by the way, whoa, hold on. Hold on. I'll just show you this here. There was a fire alarm box on it. It looked like it was active too. I mean, definitely a pre-cell phone thing. But I guess it's nice that the operator who had radio and phone communications could just roll down and hit the fire alarm. Maybe if I'd say that was for passersby if the tower was burning down. But who was that for? Who's going to use that? I wonder if it was still there in yeah, it's still there. Still there in 2012. But was the light on? The light was on that damn fire alarm. Look, that's like a real fire alarm with a light saying, hey, everybody, that's a fire alarm. I have noticed that before, but I just noticed it again. So, even back in 2004, I knew that that this tower could close suddenly. Back in the day, even back then, there was still a partial expectation that you could see cutovers, like the tower would close, but all the switches and signals would stay the same. That wasn't completely unheard of back then. So I still. I was still half expecting some tower closing announcement to go down, and me not to have any good way to go and take pictures. So I did a decent amount of documentation. Hey, there's the iconic signal bridge. I'm not caring about those signal photos. I got better ones. All right. Here's a cool thing. I don't even know what train this would be. Don't think it was the Pennsylvanian. Maybe it was. Maybe we went out on the rivers and came back on the Pennsylvanian, or maybe I think we did 2 Pennsylvania. I have to look at the schedule. But back again, you could do an Altoona day trip on just Amtrak, and you would have about a couple hours. I think you could even do a Horseshoe Curve trip. I think the meet was Johnstown, but if your outbound train was late, you missed it. So you could get to Johnstown before the whatever came back. This probably was a weekend train 44. But notice something. You may not have noticed something here. The Horseshoe, the whole east slope, it's no joke. Even with dynamic brakes, this guy came down riding the brake. Brake smoke is shooting out of the bottom of these trains, and when it came to a stop. You looked under it. The disc brakes on the Am fleets were on fire. There were flames coming out of the brake. It wasn't fully involved. It was just a lick of flame, but the brakes were on fire. The slope. I mean, it's no joke, even for a passenger train, a modern train such as this. So that was pretty nifty. And I didn't have a wherewithal to really, I didn't have my smart camera phone ready to take it out. But yeah, look, the brakes were literally on fire. Another interesting thing coming in for this is because there's only one platform at Altoona on serving track 2/track 3. So a train coming down the slope could easily do track 2, and he had a straight shot to the station. But a train on track 3 had no access to the station. I don't even think they had duck boards. Altoona's a very right-handed, left-handed. There's a term for that. All the movements are going out of the yard and over via trailing point crossovers, except for this one for the Cove Industrial Tract to get on the main. And what you would have to do, if I can flip this over to the one, and what you would have to do is come out a slope. So an Amtrak train on 3 east would first have to switch over on whatever that switch is at slope, the 3 switch or whatever, and then they'd get on 2, and then they'd finally be able to make it. CP Altoona, it's one route. They can bring them in on whatever track they want. So here's that story. The story is, trips over. I'm back at Harrisburg. So my Amtrak friend that I was with, we had just gotten some Chinese food. That was our last thing we were going to do, and we were going to eat it on the train backwards, going back. And he went, as the train pulled in, I got on, found a seat, and he went to take a photo of the engine. And the train started leaving without him. I saw him out the window, and the train's leaving. I think these were Amfleet 2s on this train, and I jump up alarmed, manually, ran to the vestibule, the front vestibule. I was in the first car, popped the manual opened the door, and I wasn't trying to do like my friend jump on, because he had my food. And I was just like, throw me the damn Chinese food. He's made his bed. He's going to miss the train. But I'm like, just give me the damn food, dude. He didn't. And then the conductor came and chewed the fuck out of me for opening the door. But, it was kind of an emergency. I don't know how he got back. I don't know if he had to take a 3-hour taxi ride for $1 jillion. He tried to catch a freight, but all of them had gone for the day. I think he managed to snag a bus. So that was his poor decision there. I'm just trying to find what I called these photos that I took at State. I saw them, but I didn't realize that they were something I need to deal with. Here we go. Oh, I like doing night photography type stuff. I wasn't super great at it, but I had a friend who gave me a tutorial of basic camera operation. So this was October. So this is not a summer trip. By the time whatever train this was, the weekend Pennsylvania. Today the Pennsylvanian always gets back to Harrisburg at noon. It's a very early train. It leaves Pittsburgh at 8 and it gets to Philly by 2. But Harrisburg, back in the day, if this was the Pennsylvanian or if this was the other thing, it might have. I don't know if it was running through the Chicago still or whatever the hell train this was. By the time it got back, maybe this was the Three Rivers. It was dark, so. I think I just got a couple more photos here. Yep, that's blurry. Don't need that. And this would, I guess, would be 55. So, yeah, my night photography. I didn't have a tripod, or not that I even would want a tripod. I was always sort of do it by the seat of your pants type of night photography. But I've since better lenses you don't need to always do this sort of thing. I also learned how to use the lens cap to tip it up a bit, but. So here we are on the last. All right, that's it. Let's see if we got any questions or anything. Did I actually type anything? Oh, God. The chat keeps freezing. All right. Well, anyway, thanks everyone for watching. Both these days were kind of short. I have a couple more things to do of this classic set. They're not all here, however. I need to make sure that I go and I had a set of old photos that I was been working my way through, and I've worked my way through most of them. At some point when I have the thing, I have a Cape May Seashore Lines trip. That was neat because I got on. I got part of an early season trip to the zoo, but an early season thing with that was sort of like a private tour. That's a neat photo set I plan to do one of these days. And I also have a set when they were discontinuing the Three Rivers back in 2005. I got a ton of photos from that. It's just a ton of sets. So it's going to take me... That's going to have to be something more probably over Christmas or Thanksgiving, because that's going to be 3 parts of 90 photos each. Kind of using that's a 5-part series, doing 50 photos a session. So... that's one I try to do something. I try to do short stuff for these so I can get them done when I'm with my mom's. At the place where at my normal house, I'm doing my up-to-date stuff. When I'm at my parents' place, I don't have my normal photos with me. I do these streams. So anyway, I also need to see if I did this Alliance trip. I think I did. Maybe I didn't. I gotta check that one. I think I did. I had to have. But if not, that's another one that might pop up at some point. Although I really, really, really did think I did it. All right, I'm just going on here. I thought I had one more interesting. Here's something I can do, but not all the photos that I have are also available on this computer. I need to go export them off of hard storage DVDs and stuff, so I got a couple more. But once I hit 2006, the classic era will probably have gone through, but I might be migrating to doing streams of current stuff. So look out for that, and thank you all for coming. I'm going to cut this off here. So you guys have a great night, and it's already tomorrow. So actually, in a few hours, I got to get to bed because I'm going on the final ride of the classic Patco cars. So, all right, I'll see you there.